Here we are. We're back. We're back again.
That was a delay, man. I'm like, you gonna say
You
something?
said it so officially.
I know. Well,
I feel like we need one of those things.
Vic,
Go.
chop chop. Episode 21. We're not rookies anymore.
Right,
We don't need to marvel at ourselves that we're on the mic. You know, we need to get to work, dude. I was in New York beginning of the week for the Clinton Global Initiative. My first time attending. Thank you to Natalie Byrne, strategist for all things comms and partnerships at Jumpstart Nova. And Catherine and I were up there. We were up there with a portfolio founder who's we haven't yet announced it, so I'm not going to disclose that part.
New portfolio company.
That's right, yeah. But, man, I got to say, really well done event in terms of just how tight the production was. I mean, as someone who has a history of throwing events, it was meaningfully better from a production perspective than pretty much everything I've been to. I'd say it was.
I think
tight.
the Clintons are pretty good at that stuff.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was very good. It had like this mini DNC feel to it, you know, so you could definitely sort of tell it was on another level, and also that there were really important people there. But they did a really good job of like leveling the playing field. Nobody sort of felt better than anyone else, you know. And obviously, it's during United Nations General Assembly week, so
all the big guns are around anyway.
Yeah. So, but it was cool, and we'll touch on some of the stuff that happened there. What have you been doing this week?
I've been raising money. Then we were hosting a bunch of people, entrepreneurs in town for 3686.
Nice.
So we had all kinds of craziness. We hosted a happy hour, and then I did a dinner. I don't know, a lot of activities around town. Yeah,
I mean, conferences in New York, ton of conferences here in town.
Right.
The healthcare sessions, Nashville healthcare sessions. Yep. So, congratulations to the Healthcare Council on executing their first healthcare sessions conference. 3686, Launch Tennessee. So yeah, it's definitely feeling like conference season is upon us again.
That's right.
You know, we're a couple of weeks out from HLTH out in Vegas. So everyone's gonna lose their minds over that. I will not be there. I will be with my Aspen Fellows hanging out in Philly. But man, we got a good show. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
All right, let's get to it. All right, first thing we're just going to talk on the Fed. We got to talk about the Fed. Jerome Powell came out. He paused. I think we kind of felt like he was going to pause this time around.
The most hawkish pause that I can imagine, where he was pretty hawkish, still talking about fighting inflation, and we're going to keep the interest rates higher for longer. And yet he didn't raise rates, which is probably good.
Yeah. I mean, CPI went up.
Yeah.
So I think
oil. I mean, oil's up.
That's right.
Rent is very delayed, of course. And so it's highly predictable. We knew inflation's going to be high for a long time.
Long time. Yeah. This is a bit of a new normal, I think. For us, there's so much geopolitical stuff underlying this. I mean, the oil is very up and down. We can't really get a handle on it.
Yeah, listen. I think it's gonna. When we've looked at the charts in the past, it's going to be a long time to get to 2% inflation. I just don't think we're going to get there. So,
he also, in addition to saying we're going to fight the long fight, he also talked about decreasing the balance sheet. Which is basically signaling they're going to go into quantitative tightening. So they're going to remove liquidity from the market. They're going to, stop buying back bonds. And that's going to have its own negative impact, especially for us in the capital markets. It's going to drive interest rates up, for people who are looking to get yield, knowing the Fed's not necessarily going to buy those bonds. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I think we're going to talk more about QT in future shows just because it's going to be a new player. We've been talking about the Fed funds rate. We're going to have to start talking about QT.
Right.
But what were your thoughts as you heard him, start to roll out that language?
Yeah, I think he is just going to pull out all the different ways to combat inflation, and unfortunately, he has a decent number of tools, and they all are going to be restrictive to economic growth.
Yeah.
And it's very confusing. I think we don't have enough time because there's so many news stories today, but to talk about quantitative tightening, kind of how it works, talk about the kind of the market for money.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And basically, in quantitative tightening, the Fed's taking supply out of the market, and that tends to drive up rates. So they either can set the base rate or they can remove supply. Either way, it has the same effect.
The same effect.
Yeah, right.
Has the same effect.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting way of, getting the same effect without coming out and saying 25 basis points, right?
Right.
Yeah,
the market reacted pretty negative. The stock market reacted pretty negatively.
No, we don't want to hear about removing liquidity from the market.
And it's going to be, some of the dot plots were all in next year, no changes. It's a long time in the hedge fund world.
Yeah.
So the public markets were rough.
Yeah. So on that note, let's talk about the Instacart IPO. The Instacart has a health edge to it, but I think the most important thing is this is an IPO that was delayed, significantly repriced, publicly repriced. We know, how big of a haircut they had to take before they could go out. I think you watched the price action post IPO, and I think you said it went out at 30, came up to 33, went back down to 30. So, congratulations to the bankers for getting the price right for the public market, right? At least in terms of the initial launch. But obviously those growth stage investors that put capital in at the really, really high valuations, probably in 2021, right? I mean, those rounds, they took a big hit.
Yeah, it got up to $39 billion, I think, at the peak. And I remember that because we were negotiating for them to acquire one of our portfolio companies, for all equity. Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad we walked away and didn't take equity at that valuation because they went public at like 10.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought it was 9.
Yeah,
and so they lost 75% of the value. That's a lot of value lost.
Yeah.
That's a lot of value lost.
It's going to be a long time for the stock to get to 100 or whatever it would be to get to that level.
Right.
So, they just had invested at too high of a price, and I think the article in the Wall Street Journal, this is before the IPO, is expensive lesson for venture firms. Mm-hmm. That's right. It costs them billions of dollars in losses.
So, just kind of a question for you. So we're now, as the IPO market opens up, we're now getting a real good picture on the corrections, right? It's nice that the IPO market is opening up, and also it seems like part of why it's opening up is the private market investors and the founders have all sort of said, listen, we have no idea when this market's going to turn. Like, Powell's giving no indication it's turning anytime soon. If we want to go, we got to just take our medicine and go, and then try to create value in public, in the sunshine. So it seems like part of the reason why the IPO market is, quote unquote, opening is because the private investors are finally willing to reprice in order to get out.
Yeah, I think that's right about Instacart. It was right about ARM. These private holders were kind of hoping for the Fed to relent and there'd be another big upswing. And I think everyone thinks that's not going to happen anymore. So you either are going to stay private for another 2 years, 3 years.
2 years minimum, right?
And for both Instacart and ARM, they've been wanting to get out for a long time already. Or you kind of accept the reality where you are now and take the later stage equity providers took a significant haircut, but it's a liquid security now, and they can maybe at least build the business.
Yeah. I guess my question is, if in fact the IPO market is now quote unquote open because we're just going to take our medicine, how long do you think? It really was a flash. It was really, at most 18 months of the crazy run up, right, in valuations. Yeah. Do you think it's just 18 months and then we sort of wash out all that bad vintage and then we're back to, a market where we're pricing things correctly and sort of the exit expectations are appropriately aligned with where the public market will value a company, and then we're kind of back in the game? Because right now I feel like you think about having bad gas in the system. It's got to like kind of work its way through.
Yeah.
But then once it's all cleared out, car can still work. You just got to get some good gas in behind it. So I'm just wondering, do you think that this clear out process is going to be as time boxed as that crazy run up vintage was? The 21, first half of 22 vintage.
I think that there's some business models that just will not work in this environment, right? So
some companies just die.
Some companies just are going to die.
Yeah.
And they never had really strong unit economics.
Anyway, right.
They weren't, if you took away the venture subsidies with very low cost capital, just playing for the quick IPO exit, then it was never going to work.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of those companies.
Right.
And you can't take those companies public today. Instacart is profitable.
Yeah.
And it's really going to be a challenge, I think, for DoorDash. They are also public, but they don't have the same like grocery advertising part. They're not as profitable. And so I think it's going to be a really interesting competitive sort of dynamic between those two. But I don't think there's probably half the businesses, maybe more than half, that the model doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Without significant venture money and then a super aggressive valuation in the IPO markets, priced of, I don't know, something like 20 times revenue or some crazy amount, it doesn't function. And so you have a fight between really the liquidation pref stack and the early stage investors that are in the money and the management team. Like, should we correct this and try to rebuild the business, or should we sell and get 10 cents on the dollar of the liquidation preference stack? Mm-hmm. I think those are the fights that are going on now. But that's gonna work its way. That problem is going to work its way through the market in the next 6 to 12 months. And people will decide one way or the other, and then it'll be over.
I mean, I think about the entire biotech industry.
Yeah.
That entire space. I mean, therapeutics broadly, especially if they don't have a clear pathway through the FDA into CMS with sort of codes in place. Like, right. I mean, that's an entire space where it feels like we're going to lose progress for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's an industry that is so capital market dependent. To your point, there's no unit economics.
Right.
Zero. It's
right.
all spreadsheet unit economics. It's not material. Right. So that feels like a space that's going to be really challenged, and even more challenged as you start to pull liquidity out of the market.
Yeah. And I think we'll see. I'm of the mind that there's going to be some pretty significant liquidity credit events over the next year, and the Fed wants
negative events.
Yeah.
And
the Fed wants to stay higher for longer, but that there might be something that happens that prevents them from doing that. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we're in this boom bust cycle where there'll be some problem. Last October we had the UK gilt market blow up. There's something about October. There's been a lot of crashes in October.
Yeah.
And then there's just a lot of issues around the world that something could flip and it could be really scary quickly, and the Fed changes. Mm-hmm. And then they can't really fix it without throwing tons of liquidity at it, which, of course, ends up in the stock market first, and then it filters out. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think there's a 50-50 chance. There's a decent chance that by summer next year, even though there's been a lot of problems, the Fed has come back and there's all kinds of liquidity again. I think kind of the cycles are accelerating. We should probably look at that, but it feels like the boom bust cycle the business cycle used to be like a 5-year cycle, mm-hmm. and I think it's faster than that now. Mm-hmm. And there's something about the amount of debt to GDP and the Fed trying to control the whole world versus just the U.S., mm-hmm. where they ride to the rescue too often, and the only way they solve it is by just oceans of liquidity, which then props up maybe companies that don't need to be propped up again, and then that creates the next problem. But there's opportunities for VCs like us to sell into that. So anyway,
if you're tracking it really closely, I mean, one thing I can tell
you got to be
was,
ready.
Yeah, one thing I can tell you for sure was not on my dance card when I started my journey into VC was going to be talking about the Fed every week.
Right. Exactly. I don't know how we got to that.
Yeah, they used to be a non-actor. When I started in this industry, they didn't even mean anything, and now they mean everything. It's crazy. It's Well, I mean, our fund cycle, right? We're going to invest over 3 to 4 years, and then sell assets in the next 3 to 4 years. And when you had a 5-year cycle, you could be in the right side of the Fed that whole time. Now, if it's 18 months or 20 months, 36 months at the outside, that's inside the window, right? So you have to be, I don't know, like in a ready position and able to gear back where all of our portfolio companies are now, like miserly. We have to be cash flow positive, cut costs, and then we're going to have to turn on a dime and be ready to exit. Yeah, and that, but I think that starts to close the aperture on the kinds of companies you feel like you can invest in, that you can maneuver in that way. So for example, like back to biotech, I don't feel like biotech companies can maneuver in that type of fast cycle, whereas a SaaS company absolutely can maneuver in that kind of fast cycle.
You can put the lever of growth up and back,
and down, no
fairly
problem.
easily.
Yes,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because you got these great gross margins.
Yeah, great gross margins, and it's a lever-based business, right?
Yeah.
Like we're going to feed our growth
engine. And we're going to spend,
and we're not going to have any earnings.
Yep.
Or we're going to grow at 300% a year.
Right.
Or we're going to gear back and just grow on cash flow. That means we can only grow at 50% a year.
Yep.
And we'll
still growing.
Yeah, exactly.
Still growing. All right. Let's do a little addendum to our trust conversation from last week. New York Times article about a procedure that was performed on multiple patients at New York Presbyterian using umbilical cord blood in spinal surgeries, and it was not FDA approved. So you found this story. Give us a little bit of a headline on it.
Yeah, so there's a product that is trying to get approved but is not approved. It uses umbilical cord blood in some way to alleviate spinal pain during surgeries. And it looks like it could be a good product eventually, but it's not approved now. And New York Pres is a one of the better brands. It's in New York City. It's a great hospital, but they treated 40 patients with this tool, with this blood-based like additive that is not approved. And then when it came to light, instead of notifying the patients, gosh, we made a mistake, and there's humans involved. People are going to make mistakes. They tried to not tell anyone, and then one of the surgeons, I think, and a couple other workers then report were whistleblowers, and it all came out, of course. And so it's just another in this unfortunately long list of there's trust issues. We can't trust that these institutions are doing the right thing. Yeah. So I want to just provide a personal story, because I think it hyper focuses on exactly what the problem is in this story. So my father, when he was still living in Brooklyn, had a brain aneurysm, ended up being rushed to Maimonides Hospital in Brooklyn, where my mom was working as a medical biller at the time. And he ended up being very lucky, because there was a top neurosurgeon who was there, who had been working on an experimental mode of surgery, which was taking a steering needle up through the groin and up to the brain, and then dropping coils in. Now it's a very, very standard procedure that they've iterated on many times since then. Yeah. At that time, it was not FDA approved. When they assessed my father, they came and talked to my mom, because he was not conscious. Yeah, right. So she had power of attorney, and they came to her and they said, "Listen, we have an approach that we think can save his life, and fast track. It did save his life, and it restored him effectively 100%. Right. So they came to her and said, we have this procedure, but it is not FDA approved. Okay. And we think
if we try this procedure, we can save his life. And we think if we cannot save his procedure, there's a very low likelihood that we can save his life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gosh, that's a lot of pressure on her to decide.
A lot of pressure. Now, thankfully, she worked there.
Yeah.
So she said, I don't want to hear that from you. I want to hear that from a doctor who I know. So she made them go get, said doctor.
Someone else who's not trying to prove himself or whatever, doing the surgery.
Yes. Yeah. So she went and got, one of the doctors who she had a relationship with, and the doctors convened, and then that doctor who she trusted came to her and said, Isabel, yes.
It's not 100% anything, but this is a better option.
Yes. I can recommend that you should agree. So then she signed off, right?
Yeah.
Waiving liability because this was not FDA approved, and understanding that. And then, the beautiful part of the story is that my dad's life was saved by this non-FDA approved procedure, which then ended up going in journals, right? I mean, and ended up being part of, I'm sure, a great legacy for this neurosurgeon, right? In producing this breakthrough that has saved countless lives at this point. So the point being, using non-FDA approved methods in surgeries,
that's not the problem.
That's not the problem.
Right.
It's the disclosure.
Yes.
That's not the problem.
Right.
It's the disclosure.
It's the disclosure and the trying to just act like the patient's not going to understand and we know better and we just won't say anything and do it. And then when it comes to light, trying to cover it up. And neither of those things is acceptable. And there's lots of situations where we don't have great approved treatments and the doctor wants to try something else, and the patient can decide if they feel comfortable or not.
That's right.
But this is not that. And in America, in New York City, for the second week in a row, you can't do that. And I don't know how many times the New York Times has to break a story and have us talk about this bad behavior.
It sounds like we're going to hear about it a lot more. It sounds like it's becoming a beat, and we're going to hear about it a lot more. That's what I'm sort of picking up by you finding these stories. And last week it was ProPublica coming up with a story. Now there's a whole podcast series on the Columbia situation. Yeah. That's spreading like wildfire.
But the way to stop the reporters from
not doing
this is not do it. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully the reporting is going to be a disincentive for people doing it. But I mean, we just wanted to share an addendum to the trust story. Yeah. I think it's a theme we need to continue to cover because ultimately, and I think the sad thing is it's coming from health systems, that are already embattled on multiple fronts. We don't necessarily need health systems also dealing with a crisis of trust, right? All right, so shifting to a slightly political, but also I think public health, global health story. Nicholas Kristof, who was the award-winning journalist who wrote the story in the New York Times that we featured before around life expectancy and the variance in life expectancy depending on what state you're in, and really sort of did that profile on Mississippi, talking about just the horrible health issues that they're dealing with there. He wrote a story this week. The headline is, "Will Republicans abandon this medical triumph?" So,
and he does opinion pieces.
Yes,
so I want to say that, but it's a lot of facts.
Yeah, but they're strong.
There's a lot of facts in this.
It's
they're
really
very well written.
Writing. It's really strong
and
writing.
fact heavy opinion pieces.
Correct. Not your typical opinion piece.
Right.
So the thing I wanted to say about this is a story around PEPFAR. Which was a program that was put in place under George W. Bush's administration.
Yeah, I didn't know what this was before this story.
So the crazy thing is, I didn't know about this until Monday when I was sitting at the plenary session for the Clinton Global Initiative.
Oh, they talked about it there.
Yes, Chelsea Clinton was interviewing a woman from Africa who was a champion in the fight against AIDS, and she was talking about PEPFAR. Literally, she had one message for the audience: please reauthorize PEPFAR.
Yeah,
because what she was saying was this program had been critical, not just in America. I think this is the crazy thing. Not just in America, but globally, creating the situation that we have today, where she was just running down lists of countries in Africa where they've hit critical milestones in terms of decreasing the population's infections with AIDS.
Yeah,
because they have milestones they're trying to hit, and she listed off like 5 or 6 different countries where they've managed to hit these milestones.
They've made very significant positive progress.
Yes,
because of this program.
Yes,
which there's lots of people involved, but it's largely a U.S. led program.
Yeah, and it's important because it's counterbalanced against a government shutdown right now. Also, basically being driven by the Republicans.
Yeah.
But this was a Republican program. So PEPFAR stands for the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, and it was a multi-billion-dollar authorization to send out life-saving medications around the world. And as those life-saving medications got better and better and better, right, they really started to
save lives
and take the sting out of AIDS. I mean, when we think about how AIDS, we experienced it back when we were growing up, it was devastating.
It was a death sentence and a fast.
And scary. Super, super scary.
Yeah.
I mean, AIDS just is not that scary anymore. And and I'm not saying that it's not a horrible disease that we don't need to continue to really work at.
Well, it's a chronic disease now. It's not a death sentence.
Yes, exactly. And PEPFAR as a body of political will is a key component to why it is that. And look, the Republicans deserve credit here, right? I mean, this is part of Republican
Bush
legacy.
Was a Republican president. He put this plan in place, and it had a great global effect.
Yeah. So I would imagine that this story is coming out this week because it is UN Global Assembly week.
Yes.
And they're trying to get the message out about this program that nobody had heard of before,
right.
Okay? Because it's up for reauthorization now, and in all likelihood,
there's no
it's not going to be
world
reauthorized.
where we shouldn't authorize this.
Yeah, but in all likelihood, it's not going to be reauthorized. I think that's why there's this campaign that includes this, this article that included it being kind of the main story that I took away from the opening plenary session at CGI is you haven't heard about this, but this thing has totally, put AIDS in a box, and we're very close to finishing the job. That was kind of what I took away from that presentation. We're very close to finishing the job, but if we pull back on this now, it actually could start to come back.
Yeah, so
it's pretty scary. I mean, honestly, I with everything else we got going on, like COVID surges and all this other kind of stuff, I'm not really up for an AIDS resurgence.
And it's not that fucking hard. You can either say it's the right public health thing for humanity to do. The U.S. has plenty of ability to fund this. That's not a question. Or you can say we want to continue to promote U.S. interests in Africa. Or you can say all of the above. And I don't really care what you say. We should reauthorize this and fund it. There's no one. I can't think of an argument that makes sense that doesn't reauthorize it.
Yeah, and look, global stability is in the United States' interest.
Yes.
So, this is one of those things that I think we have a vested interest in seeing continue, and also, just our legacy. The world is being reminded of the importance and the power of America on this front. This is a great opportunity for America to stand up and say, yes, we're going to continue to be, a leader in the world in public health.
Why wouldn't we? Who wants to not help people with AIDS in other parts of the world or in the U.S., anywhere?
I'm adding my support to please, Republicans, reauthorize PEPFAR.
Yes, it's not difficult.
That would be great. Okay. I think that's our PSA.
We can't get any further than that.
Yeah, there's nothing more to say other than we want to make sure that our listeners know about this program because we didn't know about it before this week. And
yes, the Republicans are buffoons in the House, and they're playing around with shutting down the government and stupid stuff, but they could do this easily, and it's just not that hard.
Yeah, stop vaping in movie theaters, and Reauthorize PEPFAR. Okay, Elevance Health. This is a story you found. This is kind of a continuation. We pulled this one apart a little bit, but this is a continuation on the Blue Cross Blue Shield, CVS Caremark, PBM storyline.
Yeah,
right.
We had I think a great section last week comparing the cost of a drug in a PBM and one of the Cost Plus platforms.
Yep.
And so this caught my attention because Carelon RX, which is Elevance's PBM, made the brilliant move that they're going to automatically, when you go to the pharmacy to get your medication, they automatically check a bunch of other cash discount programs. You don't have to opt in, and they just give you the better price, which seems very customer patient friendly. Who doesn't want that? That's great.
Yep.
And so I started looking at it, and it's brilliant. I mean, why wouldn't they get you the cheaper amount?
Yeah.
And then you started asking me, well, how does that fit with the rest of Carelon, which sort of I didn't know much about, and we sort of dug into.
Yeah. Well, I have a portfolio company that's having some interactions with Carelon, and those interactions are they are emergent because Carelon has taken over a previous payer relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was why it stuck out to me. I was like, Carelon RX, hold on. Well, the Carelon I'm interfacing with is not a PBM. It's not the RX. And so if you scroll down into this Healthcare Finance News article, that's where you will see that Elevance Health announced the launch of healthcare services brand Carelon in June 2022. You and I both missed that.
And maybe let's take a step back. Anthem.
Yes.
So we're saying Elevance.
Right.
And that's the right name. And it's also the old Anthem set of properties.
Right.
Big payer, probably the biggest, one of the biggest blues.
The important part being it's a blue.
Yes. It's a blue, and they have multi-state.
Multi-state blue.
And they were the reason I knew them is they're very acquisitive. They bought a bunch of venture-backed companies.
Yeah, they bought Aspire Health.
Yeah, they bought Aspire Health from here, and they bought several things.
Mm-hmm.
And they are pursuing the payvider strategy.
Yes.
That's what I knew about them. And then they rebranded
to Elevance. Away from Anthem.
Right.
And then they launched Carelon, which we're going to go into here in a second.
Which it says in the article was in June a year ago, 22. And I missed that.
But really, it was just a brand, right? I mean, it wasn't doing much in
and
June.
I think they probably quietly, I don't know how big the launch was.
I think it was pretty quiet.
Yeah.
I think it was pretty quiet. The Elevance rebrand was not quiet.
That was, right. Exactly.
So then it starts to kind of go down and talk about the larger trend. And you start to very quickly realize Carelon is to Elevance as Optum is to UHG, right?
Yes.
And you also start to connect the dots of the Blues leaving CVS Caremark, and then this whole story here around the Elevance Carelon RX, model. And then at the bottom of this article, it says that earlier this year, Elevance said it would be pursuing an acquisition of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana. So they're adding yet another state.
Yes.
With
huge market share in Louisiana.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what percentage, but significant.
Right. And so what you and I sort of said is, okay, game on.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Because here we have the payvider model that has been pioneered by UHG, and then replicated meaning followed, right?
Yeah.
By Cigna, Evernorth, and we knew Elevance was following it.
Yeah.
But now I think we're getting a better sense of the shape of it and the fact that they both acquired a bunch of healthcare services things, have now rebranded all of those things underneath Carelon, and they're also growing the payer side of the business on the Blues side.
Yeah,
and
marketing to other payers, particularly Blues, in a consolidated healthcare services brand like Optum, in this case it's Carelon, is really impressive, and that's what makes it game on. Like, they can stitch together several payers, and the Blues all pal around together already.
Yeah. So I think there was a general feeling in the past, and when I say the past, I mean before today.
right. In the last 2 years or something.
Yeah. that the Blues were, fragmented, not organized, didn't really sort of have the infrastructure, the mothership that UHG had put together. But
and their protection against competition has disappeared as of this year.
Yes.
So they're going to start losing some of their ASO business.
Right.
And it seemed like just they're going to
say a little more about that, by the way, just so we don't.
For, I don't know, 50 years or so, the Blues signed an agreement that they wouldn't compete against each other for the large employer books of business. And so if you're Blue Cross of Tennessee, you have a relationship with large employers in Tennessee, say Pilot Flying J, or I don't know, FedEx. And no other Blue, there was a negotiated agreement. No other Blue would bid on that business. And the 50 years or whatever it was, some large number of years ended. And so, I think it was Home Depot, someone in Atlanta sued to sort of make sure it didn't happen again. And so now they have to have at least 2 bids. And so a lot of the Blues have a significant book of business in their home state because no other Blue could bid on it. And that almost certainly they're going to lose some of those competitive bids. So I was viewing it as, well, it's going to be fracturing and they'll start fighting and it's just going to be kind of a hard competitive position compared to the nationwide payers that never had that advantage, but now they don't have the headwind. And that's still around, but this is a really interesting way they could kind of come together.
For sure. And especially if they start decoupling, especially if the Blues, who through necessity were working with healthcare services, organizations within other payer
like
groups.
Optum.
Well, more specifically, like CVS Caremark.
Yeah.
Like that, because that actually happens. That's not theoretical.
Yeah.
They stop working with them and they start working with Carelon RX. It's game on. It's game on, right? And I think it just further cements that this Payvider thing, this is basically the future of healthcare in America. This is it. This is how it's going to work.
Yes, the health systems, I don't know how they're going to respond, but they are behind.
So you can check the show notes. We're going to put a link to Carelon.com. But just read through this and tell me this is not Optum.
Right.
And some of the listeners may be like, okay, finally you caught up. We've known about Carelon forever, but we weren't really tracking to fully understand. But when we looked at it, we looked at the About Us page and we started to kind of see the different components, which you see down at the bottom.
The businesses.
The different businesses. We're like, okay, we know some of these businesses. MyNexus. We know them. We remember when they got acquired, and now they're Carelon Insights. That sounds a whole lot like Optum Insight, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're literally just like Carelon RX. Okay, well, Optum RX, Carelon Health, Optum Health.
Right.
They're literally just like taking the template, and just slapping their own name on there. And aggregating Blues.
Yeah, the only thing that they have changed that will be interesting to see how the market responds, except for Aspire, is UHG has been really careful about leaving the brands where they are. They don't really change the brand that much. Right? So they buy Change Healthcare or they buy...
Change Healthcare is Optum Insights. Is Optum Insight.
Oh, they have changed it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, so maybe it's all
No.
now.
I think this is the playbook.
Yeah.
I think this is the playbook.
Has NaviHealth changed names?
No, NaviHealth hasn't changed names. The services businesses, which is kind of why Aspire Health, that's what I think happened with Aspire Health.
Yeah.
The services-based businesses don't have their names change. But if it's like a business unit technology kind of play,
they pull that in.
They pull that in.
Yeah.
They pull that in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so they've built this portfolio largely through acquisitions, and it's pretty strong.
Yeah, now they're unifying it through branding and probably some other, forms of alignment, probably some level of technology alignment.
Yeah.
It's just game on, right? Now, I think we have to start taking the Blues more seriously and looking at Elevance as like the leader of the Blues as it pertains to what the future of the business model is going to be, especially if they're actually acquiring, other state businesses. That to me is that's a clear signal that they're the leader in the space.
There's no question they're the leader in the Blues space.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how Cigna's been working on this longer, but Evernorth has been a slower process to get going, at least in my estimation. And then CVS doesn't have this component, as far as I know. Although, of course, they have the old Caremark.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. It feels like the payers and the payvider, the competition is heating up. It's game on, and they're going to compete for who is dominant. And I don't think the health systems really are there.
No,
but they're just not in the game. And I'd like to see them in the game.
They're not.
But they're not in the game right now.
They're not in the game. Okay, so then we're going to shift to our payvider on the health system side.
Yeah.
Kaiser,
which I'm rooting for, but they got a ways to go.
Yeah, so they are the latest victim of the return of the unions. We got all sorts of unions, striking. UAW, writer strike still going on, although I think that feels like it's waning. And now we've got a consortium of 67,000 Kaiser Permanente workers that have voted to authorize a strike.
Yeah, and it's interesting. They preempted the end of the contract. So the contract ends September 30th. And they claim that there's bad faith negotiating going on. And then Kaiser responded pretty transparently saying, we are negotiating, trying to get this to the finish line. But either way, it seems pretty combative. And whether they get something done or they strike, it seems rough.
Yeah, so one of the things I've noticed in these union strikes is in some cases, the unions are striking against an employer that in the macro is actually well-positioned and pretty strong, and where it feels like there's a real win-win that can come out of the strike. But in some cases, and I hate to put the writer strike in this bucket, within their own contained world, right, of the writers and the studios, certainly the writers can look at the studio CEOs, they can look at, profit margins, they can look at those things and they could say, this is ridiculous, we should be getting more XYZ, right? In that
relative between those two sides.
Correct. In that close context, and I'm very, very empathetic as it pertains to the AI issue, right? And the using of copyrighted materials, using of likeness, and leveraging that, from the perspective of someone who is a writer and talent and cares about my own personal intellectual property. I'm very empathetic to that particular issue. However, in the macro, the studios are weak.
Right.
They are under siege and under threat by all the distribution platforms, oversaturation of content in the market,
right?
And just new content platforms like TikTok that are taking more attention, especially from younger generations, right?
Yeah,
so the overall format is being deprecated, quite frankly. And so the studios are weak. The studios are weak, and you're trying to get heavy negotiation leverage from a weak player in the macro, environment. It doesn't mean you can't win that battle, but there is some negated mid to long term value in the effort, and this feels similar to me, right? Which is to say, I don't know enough about the details here. You very well in the micro, just looking at the 67,000 workers and whatever information they have specifically about their, arrangement as a labor force with the administrators and the people that are leading Kaiser Permanente, they absolutely could have a very, good case, right? But man, Kaiser's a health system. I mean,
right.
Kaiser's a health system trying to figure out how to navigate.
Negotiate against Evolance in California.
Dude, they're trying to figure out how to navigate their way to being like a proper payvider, but like they're dealing with their health system.
I agree with you completely. It feels like a shrinking pie, shrinking market, and people are fighting over the smaller, like, what can I get in this situation because it looks really scary, as opposed to the payers that are building and growing the pie. And I mean, I think it's a hard job to work in a health system, and people should be paid a fair wage. It's hard work. And at the same time, Kaiser's negotiating against all of these payers, and if they pay their employees too much, that it's going to hurt them in those negotiations. And over time, the pie is going to shrink faster and faster and faster. And that's kind of what's going on in the writers' strike too with the studios. Like, sure, the writers can get more for a minute, but I watch YouTube probably more than I watch movies.
That's the thing, right? It's like this writer strike has happened, and it's like I'm not hurting for content at all.
Exactly.
This has not impacted my life one bit, dude. My Netflix queue and my Max queue, the number of shows that I still haven't seen, I can't watch them all in this lifetime.
Right.
That are out today. You can never make another show for the rest of your life. I can't watch all the content that's out there between now and the day I die. So this is not going to hurt me.
Yeah, and I watch a lot of content that's not scripted. There is no writer in it.
That's right.
And that's a trend that's not going back. And so they're fighting over this shrinking
making content
thing
right now.
Yes, right. We didn't pay any writers to do this.
No.
So I think you're right. It is the labor battles are in the wrong place, kind of. But they're understandable in the micro. I understand.
I don't know what other alternatives they have to improve the condition of the labor workforce. I mean, obviously, inflation is creating a lot of pressure here too, right? There's environmental pressures that are creating the need for higher wages that are enemies to the company.
Yeah, that's right. But the revenue for health systems is capped.
That's the ultimate point.
So there's no more money. Like you can say the CEO should make less and fine, but this is a struggling market of health systems, and taking the best run and
the best
forward-looking integrated system with payer, provider. They're on both coasts now. Both coasts are striking. It's just sad. It doesn't mean that I don't think people deserve a great wage. I think it's short-sighted, and I don't know where it's going to go, but it makes me worried.
I mean, when you compare it to the story we just talked about with the Everlands Carillon, and I don't think that they're in a position where they're going to have union,
they don't employ union workers.
I don't see that happening, right? So it just accrues more and more leverage to the payviders that actually started as insurance companies.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. I think that's a good time to take a break. We'll let Doug share a little bit about Jumpstart Foundry, and then we'll come back to close out the show.
Thanks, guys, for the opportunity to talk about our pre-seed fund, Jumpstart Foundry. My name is Doug Edwards, CEO of Jumpstart Health Investors, the parent company of Jumpstart Foundry. We're so excited to be able to talk about early stage venture investing, certainly the need for us to change the crazy world of healthcare in the United States. We are spending 20% of our GDP, north of $4 trillion a year on healthcare with suboptimal outcomes. Jumpstart Foundry exists to help us find and identify and invest in innovative companies that are going to make a difference in healthcare in our country. Every year, Jumpstart Foundry invests a fund, raises a fund, and deploys that across 30, 40, 50 assets every year, allowing ease of access for our limited partners to invest to help us make something better in healthcare. Some of the benefits of Jumpstart Foundry is there's no management fees. We deploy all the capital that's raised every year in the fund. We find the best and brightest, typically around single-digit percentage of companies that apply for funding from Jumpstart, and we invest in the most incredible, robust, innovative solutions and founders in the United States. Over the last 9 years, Jumpstart Foundry has invested in nearly 200 early stage, pre-seed stage companies in the country. Through those most innovative solutions that Jumpstart Foundry invests in, we also provide great returns and a great experience for our limited partners. We partner with AngelList to administer the fund, making that ease of access not only with low minimums, but the ease of investing in venture much better. We all know that healthcare is broken. Everyone deserves better. Come alongside us with Jumpstart Foundry, invest in making the future of healthcare better, and make something better in healthcare. Thank you, guys. Now back to the show.
All right. So quickly, we just want to talk about some FTC stuff. Lena Khan announced that she was going to crack down. Lena Khan is the FTC chair, for anyone who doesn't know. And she has decided she wants to crack down on below-the-radar deals. And Vic, can you please define below-the-radar deals?
Below the radar is below $100 million in an acquisition.
Okay, so literally this is like target range for us.
Yeah, these are our deals.
Yes, so Lena Khan wants to start regulating small you can't even call it small cap. Strategic M&A.
Tuck-in acquisitions.
Tuck-in acquisitions in healthcare specifically.
Yeah.
In healthcare specifically.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like if you're a Major League Baseball player and you can't hit anything, let's just go down to high school and play.
Dude, I want to like her. But like, come on. $100 million? That's... First of all, do you have the resources to actually do that fairly?
No, she does not have the resources to do that. And who cares? I mean, like, she needs to figure out what is actually important and go fight that.
I don't think people understand how small $100 million is.
I mean, I don't know the size of the Amgen acquisition, but usually she's doing something that is like 10 billion to 50 billion. And the FTC for years has not dealt with below 100 million because what you're saying, it's too small. They're not resources and they don't really care.
She's identifying a fundamental reality of the modern technology economy, which is the pace at which it operates. There is an entire company building competency that comes through M&A, where companies will buy companies that are really products that become features that can be bolted onto their overall distribution platform. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what she's highlighting. And I mean, I get it. But like, so you're going to try to stop that? And that is so baked into the way that the market works right now. I don't even like, there's so many founders who want to sell at 100 million. There's so many VCs who want to exit at 100 million. Like, there's so many players in the market who they're playing for this.
I have a core difference of opinion from her that I do not think the government can control the entire market. You have to let the open free market work. She's upset that there have been some times when big tech, and you can pick any of the big ones, so Google, Apple, Microsoft, they all do it. If they see a up-and-coming trend, they will attempt to buy all the companies in that space to protect their brand, protect their position. And I understand that. And the way to fix that is not to go stop every possible acquisition, but it's to sort of enable competition so that a company can get bigger and decline and go be the next NVIDIA. And NVIDIA is not going to sell. They're trying to beat them all. And so it just is not realistic for her to think she's going to control every deal and only let the good ones in and block the other ones down at this level. She's losing every case up at the way where she is. So taking on a whole bunch of little ones doesn't make sense. I mean, that's just like going down to high school.
And to announce this at the Oliver Wyman Health Innovation Summit and say you're going to focus on healthcare. I mean, dude, Judy Faulkner at Epic is not acquiring companies at 100 million. Okay, she's not buying anything. She's just building it all. There are no tech monopolies that are doing this. Now there are payviders who are acquiring these capabilities. 100 million here. 300 million there. Several billion in some cases, right? Depending if it's a really really big services organization. But like, you're going to stop that? I mean, it's crazy. They're buying capabilities they don't currently have.
Yes, she's going to lose in court. I mean, she can't. She's not going to be successful, and it doesn't make sense.
So then you pointed out to me now, for anyone who doesn't know how these agencies work, they're led by commissions. The commissions are generally going to be, and maybe generally, always going to be majority led by the administration that is currently.
I think by policy.
Yeah.
It's 3-2.
3-2.
By whatever administration is in the White House.
It's currently in the White House. So what you end up having is, two commissioners that are the minority, and they are the dissenting minority. And, they're not going to win votes on pure party lines, but through argumentation and dissenting, and, you get more balance in how these decisions get made.
They can shape the direction
for sure.
By how they dissent and
make good arguments.
Yeah,
right.
And it makes the whole thing better.
It makes the process better.
If you have two sides of a argument.
So what you pointed out is you just have to go to ftc.gov, go look at the about page, look at the commissioner's staff, and what you will find is literally there's a paragraph that says, the commission is headed by 5 commissioners nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate, each serving a 7-year term. No more than 3 commissioners can be of the same political party. The president chooses 1 commissioner to act as chair. Okay. So you have that paragraph.
Yeah.
That paragraph is above 3 commissioners listed.
Yeah.
So the 3 commissioners are obviously Democrats.
Yes.
There are no Republican minority dissenting commissioners at the FTC right now.
Yes. There was a Republican, and she resigned in protest over something in February, some action. I can't remember which one, but one of the big cases she didn't think was worth the FTC's time, and in protest resigned. And Biden I don't know the details. Biden either hasn't nominated a Republican, because you can't put a Democrat on here.
No.
He either hasn't nominated a Republican, or the Senate, which is controlled by Democrats, hasn't confirmed who he's nominated. And I don't know which it is, or no one will serve, which also could be true.
Yeah. Look, I don't know what it is, but if you want to see what
dysfunction looks like.
Well, no, I was going to say, if you want to see what high functioning dissent looks like from a commissioner, go look at the SEC and look at Hester Pierce. She doesn't win anything. Okay. Gary Gensler is like, he's got his agenda. He's running away with stuff, but she presents a very thoughtful counterpoint to him regularly. And at a minimum, it's a signal to the market that the SEC is not this one-way train, and that as the things are going through, it's really Gary Gensler's agenda. So you at least know that there are people in there that are presenting opposing viewpoints, right?
Yes.
And that is helpful. That on its merit alone is really, really helpful.
Yes, and these agencies have hundreds or thousands of people that work in them from both political parties, and it is useful in the SEC for people to feel like their concerns are aired in the boardroom where the big decisions are made.
That's right.
And I think they probably, if they've worked there any time, they understand how the political stuff goes.
Of course, you have to.
And so the FTC is the same. And I cannot believe that no one will serve. It's a prestigious seat. And so somehow its dysfunction either in the nominations or in their confirmation.
So, I mean, this matters because the FTC is, a big player in whether or not deals get done. And health systems are going to continue to need deals to get done because that is still the primary way they're going to be able to find economic viability. And it should not be encouraging to anybody that a spotlight is going to, intensify on healthcare, starting to look at deals $100 million and less. I mean, that should not warm and fuzzy anybody who cares about healthcare figuring out how it's going to navigate out of this problem.
Yes, there's no question.
All right, let's finish up the dysfunction with the House GOP. They floated a new plan to avert the government shutdown, but the fact that we're even talking about a government shutdown after we just went through this, like how many games of chicken can we actually play? And at what point do you just stop believing the game of chicken?
I don't believe the game of chicken right now.
Well, how can you after the last one we just went through, 4 months ago?
Yes.
Did that ceiling, was it 4 months ago, 3 months ago?
They are going to figure out something. But the reason to talk about this is that the Republican-controlled House tried to come up with a plan to fund the government, and they couldn't agree themselves.
Yeah, that's the whole storyline of this.
So there's no plan to even talk about.
That's the whole storyline of this current House GOP.
Yes, they
are not unified.
No, they're the opposite of unified.
Yes.
They can't get anything. They can't agree on anything. And it just is sad. I mean, like, for our country to not have the ability to do the first and most important thing that Congress has to do, which is create a budget to fund the federal government. That's the first thing they have to do. And they can't do it. And I think you're right. They will figure out something to kick the can down the road.
Yeah, but it'd be really suboptimal.
Going to be suboptimal. And it just gives no one confidence that we have people that know what they're doing. I mean, it would be fine to have an opinion about the Republicans think we should control spending in some way, and the Democrats fight against that, and they have a discussion and come up with something. But that's not – we can't even get there because they can't get their act together.
No. So, yeah, I mean – I think we just had to talk about the government shutdown just because it's news, but it just further magnifies the problem that DC is, and DC's critical to healthcare, and it's not looking good.
Yeah.
It's just not looking good.
So they should keep supporting AIDS treatment.
Yes, do that. Figure out how to reauthorize PEPFAR, guys.
And then let's just take whatever solution that you're going to do on October 6th, and let's do it now.
And stay out $100 million M&A deals.
Yes.
You have better things to do. All right. Let's see. I think
that's the show.
I think that's the show. And I think next week I'm going to be in Louisville for what was Aging 2.0. Now it's called Optimize. So I'll be at a panel.
Okay.
But I think I'm going to drive back up here and be here in time for the show.
Okay. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks for the show.
All right.
Bye.